All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee for August 3rd, 2020. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. A couple of us are in the room tonight. We do have Sean Flynn, who's on remotely. And let's see, we got Jay. I believe Brian is on as well. And is Peter on this evening? I'm not sure.
No, Peter will not be here.
He will not be here this evening. Okay, so that completes it. All right, calling to order meeting. We before we start, we usually do two public input sessions. I'm going to start with the first public input session this evening. Is there any members of the public out there who have anything that they would like to comment on? Anybody?
There's a 603 number.
Okay. All right. So we will have another public input session later in the meeting. So if you wanted to make comments, you can do so at that time. Moving on. First item on the agenda for this evening is the approval of the meeting minutes. Have we all had an opportunity to take a look at those? Do we have any questions? Didn't see anything. And if they look good, I'd entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. A motion, do I have a second? Do I have discussion? All right, all those signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Brian, okay. Motion passes 4-0-0. Okay. So first order of business this evening, it looks like fire department. Do we have any representatives from the fire department on the line? Chief? Is the chief there?
Hello?
Hello? Is that Chief
Evening.
Russell?
So Deputy Nichol is also in the meeting with us. Should there be any questions that he can field?
Okay.
I guess, Mr. Chairman,
Good
is
evening.
the committee looking for any further information or specific questions?
All right. Yeah, we can hear you a little bit better. So does anybody have any questions for the chief?
Well, I think where we left it with our last meeting, Chief, is we were evaluating as a committee, the fire truck replacements and the two that were proposed in the original capital improvement that you submitted. And the idea behind, is there an opportunity to have one kind of more utility vehicle? And the idea was, if we can get an updated cost on what that one multi-purpose vehicle would be over the cost of the two that were proposed, that was really where we left it as a committee, if I recall.
Yes.
Okay. So when I spoke with you last, we did put two vehicles, two trucks on the CIP over the next 5 years. One of them, the first one being the tanker, which again is 29 years old, beyond its normal service life. And what we are doing is, because what we're proposing is a slightly smaller tanker. The current tanker carries 2,500 gallons of water. We're proposing a truck that will carry approximately 1,800 gallons of water. And the reason for that is, since we've had the significant increase in fire hydrants in town, and the coverage of town going from about 55% to probably somewhere closer to 90% of the community being protected by fire hydrants or municipal fire hydrants. The need for, or the long-term need for the larger tanker has really diminished a little bit. We do still have some areas of town that are outside of the range, the normal range of 1,000 feet, 500 to 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant. Those are some of the, mostly some of the cul-de-sacs. There are some sections of CBH that are outside of the hydrant, what we refer to as the hydrant district, or the availability of a fire hydrant within 1,000 feet of the building that may be having an issue. And in doing so, we're able to go from by also reducing the size of the amount of water, we're able to go to a larger cab and equipment storage capacity. And this is something right now. The truck carries only 2 firefighters. There's not room in the cab of the truck because it's a conventional Mac cab for breathing apparatus and other equipment that's normally either housed within the seats or built into the cab of the newer vehicles. This new truck would allow that. Again, a little bit less water because we don't have the lack of fire hydrants that we had, even 5 years ago. However, we have not come to the determination yet to be able to make a recommendation to make this and I guess for lack of a better term, a multi-purpose truck. The community currently has 3 engines and 1 tanker. This would be replacing the tanker. However, it would be able to function. It'll have a bigger pump because that's typical. That's standard now. It'll have at least as much, a little less water, but at least same size pump or larger. It'll be able to carry more personnel than the current truck carries, but it's still not going to necessarily replace 2 trucks. That's something we're still working on. If there is any possibility of that, that is something we're working on, and that's why we've put this truck first, so that replacing this truck will give us some time that we may down the road push that second engine out a little further, or potentially not end up having to replace that and run with the 3 trucks as opposed to 4. But I truly cannot commit to doing that just yet. We have not dotted our I's and crossed our T's that is a viable plan. So as of today, we need to at least consider the replacement of both trucks, and obviously the tanker being the higher priority at this point.
Okay,
Thank you, Chief.
thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
And I apologize, Mr. Cutter. I don't believe I answered the second part of your question as far as pricing.
Well, I mean, you kind of did, right? Because if you're saying that both engines are still needed in the capital improvement plan, there's no opportunity at this time to proceed with 1 hybrid, right? Because we're not simply ready for that as a town. Then the answer is it stands as previously presented, right? And we're not going to evaluate the cost of a utility type vehicle.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I'll just qualify that further with, by doing the tanker, replacing the tanker first, we still have that possibility to pull that second engine out. If we go engine first, then we still would need to replace a tanker because we're not totally 100% covered by hydrants and so on and so forth. And we still have a large area of woods, probably more than a lot of communities around us, where a tanker comes into play to support brush fire type operations at the edge of the roads and having forestries come out and fill off that tanker and so forth. So I guess, we're putting the tanker ahead so that the possibility exists down the road. If we don't put the tanker ahead and we put the engine as the immediate need, then we don't have that flexibility down the road. So to a degree, we are laying the groundwork to at some point down the road, potentially not have to replace that second truck.
So Chief, if you did have to do the second one, is the fiscal year you put on the form still the same one you wanted at, or can we push it further down the road?
I think it'd be wise. Obviously, when we look at the lifespan, we're beyond it. So that's the pressing priority. One of the things that we've since learned since I last spoke with the CIP committee, and I believe Mr. Brown has shared, is, and I didn't know in all the years I've been doing this, is that our trucks are covered by our insurance company for typically full replacement value. So if a truck is involved in an accident, suffers a fire, whatever, is basically damaged beyond repair. I've always been under, and I believe, Troy, correct me if I'm wrong, he was under that they were covered by full replacement. Well, we just learned that's only the case until the truck is 20 years old, Troy, I believe is what Primex told us.
I think it was 20.
I think it was 20, yeah.
Yeah, so neither of these trucks is actually quote unquote fully insured at this point. What we would get is whatever fair market value for them that Primex determines if something were to happen to one of them. So there's is that a positive or a negative? Well, we're not losing anything. But if we did have an unfortunate situation where we had a truck involved in it, we would have to come up with an emergency replacement for that vehicle at the town's cost. And that's not an easy feat to do, as I've explained. Even if we ordered this truck on March 13th of next year, assuming we were ready to place that order and it passes at the ballot, the warrant article would have passed, we're still looking at a year out for delivery of that truck, because that's about what the time frame for building them is. So to push, I guess, to Mr. Weber, to your question, could we push engine 2 replacement out a couple of years? I think I can comfortably say right now, yes, we could, based on maintenance, based on how it's running. And I think it's a good idea from the standpoint of it gets that spread out. I know there's some concern, and I share it likewise, that we're looking at replacing 2 trucks in 2 years, and 20 years from now, that's going to be the same thing. It's not going to change. So ideally, if we have 4 trucks, we're looking at a 20 to 25 year replacement, actually 5 trucks with the rescue. If we were to do one every 5 years, it kind of spreads out lease options, it spreads out everything out. Unfortunately, because we haven't kept with that replacement program, a big part in due to newer trucks are a little bigger and wouldn't fit in the old station, we've pushed it out. So now we're playing a little bit of catch up. So I guess the short answer is yes, we could push right now. We could comfortably push it out a few years. I could be back here in a year saying, we've had a major failure of transmission or engine or pump or whatever, and we need to replace that truck sooner than later. So, but as of today, yes, we could push that truck out a little bit, that second truck, engine 2.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
And I guess I'd ask if I could, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if Deputy Nickel has anything to add to that, where he oversees maintenance.
Do you have anything to add, Deputy?
No, I mean, I would, to further what the chief was saying, we did have an incident some years ago with engine 4, one of our newer trucks, where we actually caught a fire that had started inside an electrical cabinet. And so, I mean, as far as to complement what the chief was saying, had something happened with that truck, it would have been fully covered had something happened to it, where now, because our trucks are so much older now, we wouldn't have that luxury.
Okay. Troy, do we know, in terms of the capital reserve fund, so there's $50,000 in the fund now, is that my understanding?
For repairs.
For repairs. Would there be any possibility of increasing that fund for repairs at some point, or no? Is that something that?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, it's always an option
Mhm.
for the board, to discuss. The CIP could recommend that for the board to consider.
Okay.
I mean, we know, I think the chief knows and the deputy that if the 50,000 was sort of to address a pump failure, transmission failure, and typically those costs can be anywhere from 20 to 50,000. I guess there could be repairs, chief, that could exceed the 50, but I think that was the logic of 50,000 was between the operating budget and having a capital reserve, we should be able to address the major repair.
Correct. And I guess I would just add to that, that was designed for an unforeseen emergency type repair. At some point, we get to the age of the vehicle and other, more minor issues that have kind of existed that, aren't imminent or aren't more or less worth the cost of repairing them because of the age of the vehicle. At some point, your repairs are going to outweigh the value of the vehicle. And you're more or less throwing good money after bad. I guess I would just put that out there that, I'm going to venture from talking with the one vendor we've kind of used for our numbers and our background due diligence. An engine, the tanker will probably fetch the most on resale or trade-in, but at that, we'll be lucky to see $50,000 for the tanker in a trade-in or type situation. So if your truck has got basically a value of $50,000 on the open market, you really want to be putting $50,000 into it in a repair. At some point, we have to say it served us well. But it's not worth sinking, money into on an ongoing basis. So, and the capital reserve, and Troy, correct me if I'm wrong, is set up purely for repairs. I don't believe the language is in there to use that funds towards purchase.
That's correct. Just emergency repairs.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for the chief? In terms of, so we're looking at one fire truck for 2021, and that's going to be 662,000. Is that my understanding? And then 2022, $623,600.
Correct.
Okay. And I noticed there was another option for multi-purpose truck for 750,000.
Well, that was a real rough number before we had this discussion with the
Okay,
chief.
all right.
So that didn't come from the chief or anyone else. That was just a guess if we were able to move to a utility vehicle, understanding, or a multi-purpose vehicle, understand there may be a little bit more cost associated with that, but long-term, there's value savings over the cost of two trucks. That was the idea behind it.
I see.
Yeah.
So, if I can just ask, does the chief know what a multi-purpose truck does go for? I know that we guessed at 750, but we must have some idea of what it does go for.
So I'm not really sure, that there is such a thing as a multi-purpose truck.
Well, I'm sorry, not multi-purpose, but the dual purpose we talked about.
So the tanker we're proposing would be able to function as both a tanker and an engine, which the current truck can do. The current truck's bigger limitations are crew capacity, equipment capacity, and so forth. So the truck, the 662,000 we're proposing for next year, that pumper tanker, for lack of a better term, I guess would probably, not being party to your previous conversations about a multi-purpose vehicle, but would serve a dual role as both an engine, or continue to serve a dual role as both an engine and a tanker. But the added advantages being it will carry at least a crew of 4, potentially 5. It'll carry equipment to be classified as the NFPA classifies structural response vehicles as Class A and so forth. So this proposed truck would meet the Class A pumper criteria. So it would get us full value on our the NFPA standards. It would get us full value on our insurance services rating schedule. So I go out on a limb here and I guess say that the truck we're proposing is what you may be calling a multi-purpose vehicle. And that is the reason for the cost above the second truck or the engine 2 replacement, which is a little lower because that's less water and so forth. And quite candidly, both the deputy and I were surprised that there was such a narrow difference in cost. I would have probably been with whoever came up with the 750 if you were to, ask me without, having the research we've done. But in reality, this truck will serve the purpose of an engine, serve the purpose of a tanker, carry additional people and equipment, meet the requirements for a Class A pumper for insurance purposes and for codes and standards purposes for approximately the 662 that we've proposed.
So just a quick thought when you're discussing right now about the difference in vehicles, and you keep talking about it holds more people. Being a volunteer fire department, let's say fire person A and fire person B gets there. Are we going to wait for the other two, or can they just take their own vehicle and drive to the fire?
So our people respond to the station where their gear is. They get their gear on. They get on the apparatus. So there's crew integrity. There's supervision. We have shied away from the days of firefighters carrying gear in their personal vehicles for a number of reasons, but the biggest and the foremost is the carcinogens that remain in the gear and the potential for cross-contamination of their car, anyone else who rides in the car, and so forth. So it's industry best practices are you don't carry gear in a personal vehicle, and that's why if you're familiar, you've seen Nashua, their district chiefs, Manchester's district chiefs, their duty supervisors are now in pickup trucks, so that everything's in a pickup truck where it's not part of the passenger compartment. So we have.
Understood. I guess I'm just thinking that we have a fire truck that will hold 4 firefighters. 2 show up, and we have to wait 5 minutes for the other 2.
So we do have the ability, Mr. Bork, to see who's coming in. We have the technology that our personnel sign on with their phone, and we can see if there's only 2 coming for whatever the call may be, then those 2 will leave. If they see there's more coming, it gives them, all right, we need to wait 1 minute for this person, or they're going to be 4 minutes out, they'll get on the next truck. Yeah. So we have kind of overcome those challenges with technology.
All right, thank you.
So with this, I don't have my computer this evening with the various options, I'm sure Mr. Weber does, right? But I believe option 1 is as written.
Correct.
From the front. So as a committee, if that's what our next step is to make a decision on, based upon what we heard tonight, it would probably be to proceed with option 1.
Correct. From my standpoint, it would be.
Yeah. Unless you're looking to push it out to like 2022, from 21 to 22, or change the years. I guess that was your question.
That was my question, because I'm not sure how everything's folding in right now. It'd be good to
Yeah.
look at the numbers and see, is there more bandwidth to take it in 2023
Right.
versus 2022? I wanted to make sure the chief was comfortable with us if we did push it a year, that we do have the equipment that would, keep the community safe.
So maybe when we get down to other, we'll hear from Jake tonight, who can
Mhm.
maybe give us that view.
Yeah, and at that time we can take action.
Sure. Yeah. You want to defer? We can do
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just so I want to make sure I understand, I understood Mr. Weber to push the second vehicle out. Are we talking the tanker replacement or the engine replacement you're looking to push out?
It would be the engine, be
I
the
think it's the
second
engine,
one,
yeah.
chief.
The second one, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I don't have the option paperwork you have. So if I could ask, what is your option 1 you're considering?
It was exactly what you presented to us. 2021,
Okay, so the
and then a
pumper,
second
tanker,
truck.
The tanker,
Right.
okay.
Correct.
That's the way you wish it to be, correct?
Correct, the tanker in next year, because again, it's going to take a year to get. So the reality is that tanker won't be in town till sometime, late winter, January, February timeframe, 2022.
So can we pay for it on delivery?
Well, a lot of the manufacturers do offer incentives for payment, payment on delivery as opposed to leasing, and they'll work with us, or as opposed to financing and so forth. So we potentially, if we were to finance on our own and not through the manufacturer, we may be able to leverage some, pay the manufacturer, at the time of delivery and leverage some savings there. But yeah, they're like anything else. The cash sells.
Cash is king.
Cash
Yeah.
is care. And the higher the number of trucks you order, the better price you get. So, but I think we'll stick with one for the time being.
It's a good decision.
Probably so. Okay. Sean, did you have any questions for the chief? I know you're on here this evening. Anything you'd like to add?
I do not. Going over all the minutes from last meeting that I had missed and what just got clarified here, I don't have any questions.
Okay. All right.
So thank you, Chief. Thank you, Deputy.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks,
All
Doug.
right. Thank you, folks.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Have a great evening.
You too. Be well.
Yes. be
You
safe.
too. Have a good night.
Good night. So we will defer on this until later in the meeting, I guess, and we can discuss that option. The next item on the agenda is the police department. Do I have Chief Sergeant on the phone?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. You do.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm outstanding. Thank you. How are all of you?
We're doing all right. So, looks like we have you on the agenda for this evening. We did discuss last time, I think, about the police station. We had a long discussion about whether to push it out, whether to do how we were going to decide whether we're going to have a separate building or it's going to be attached to the fire station. Is there anything new that any input that you can provide us at this time in terms of an update on that?
There's nothing new that I have to report. I did want to share with the committee that I did reach out to Ekman Construction. I spoke with Preston Hunter, who was involved in the building of the new fire station. I also had some contact with the architect who did the standalone plans in the phase 2 and then the redacted phase 2 plans. And as we started looking at a potential third option to evaluate the town hall facility, is that a viable option? What type of cost would go with that? Preston Hunter from Ekman Construction felt that renovations are more challenging to budget than new buildings. So he was looking to receive a copy of the floor plans for the town hall building. Mr. McKeon from Castle Booth Architectural Corporation, he requested the same thing. I did receive those plans last week. Unfortunately, they're the big designer plans, so I need to figure out a way to get a digital copy so I can email that to them so they can do some work. With that said, I spoke with Town Administrator Brown, and what he recommended to me was obviously, as I'm learning, there's a great cost with trying to consider these different options. We did the initial assessment in the initial plans to come up with a standalone building. I then received an invoice for all of the work that he had done for phase 2. And before moving forward with really putting in a lot of time and effort into the town hall option addition, Mr. Brown recommended to me to work with Casel Boost and get a not to exceed contract with a definitive scope of service. And I think that would protect the town. I think it would protect the department. We would know we have impact fees that would be available, and if authorized to be released for that by the Board of Selectmen, we would know, hey, this is going to cost so many thousands of dollars, or he would need this much to get to this level. So again, we can provide members of the public, the selectmen, the budget committee, members of this board with most informative information as we move forward. So other than that, I truly don't have anything new to report, but we will continue to work and see if we do have the funds that we can evaluate the town hall option, addition, and whatnot, and see what that looks like compared to the other 2 options.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Does the board have any other questions for the chief? I know the last time we voted on this, so I think.
Yeah, we voted, excuse me, to allocate the engineering costs? 2023?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Troy, do you have anything to add to that? What?
No, the chief's covered it. The next step is, as he said, is to really examine the town hall concept phase 3 and get a real good, solid understanding of what would be accomplished and what the shortfalls would be, if any, and what the estimated cost would be to do that.
Do we have a timing for that?
We have a what?
Timing? How long it would take to pull that cost together?
Well, that's why I've asked that the chief is going to get a contract from the architect, and in that scope of work, I'm sure it'll have a start date and an end date, a delivery date of the work. So,
Okay, because I'm just trying to think of how we plug it into the overall plan.
oh, well,
Yeah.
chief, when you're talking to the architect, maybe, find out what his schedule is and say it's, it's a quick turnaround's needed to do that exercise.
He's been very quick, very helpful. I think I would probably, I will reach out to him, see what the time frame would look like from his perspective, and maybe Mr. Brown and I can get something prepared that if the board was to authorize me a certain level of funds, or I could get an idea, maybe at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, we could present something and know that we have the funds, I have the will of the board, and I could try to get something back to this committee as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks, chief.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Chief, for being on the call. We appreciate it, your input, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your continued support. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of the evening.
You do the same.
You too,
Thank
Chief. Thank you.
Okay. Next item is the Highway Department. Any further discussion? Whoops, hello.
Kevin there.
Is this
Kevin Brown.
Kevin Brown? Oh.
Oh, yeah, I'm here. Kevin.
Hi.
Hi, gentlemen. How's everybody?
Sled power's
Good,
Kevin.
Sled power. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, my home email. I'm on my phone, so.
That's all right.
As long as you're here. Okay.
So I think where we left it with the highway department was we were trying to get a reconfirmation of some of the costs associated with the equipment that was presented originally. Is that true? Refresh my memory.
Yes.
Yeah, and we had a good conversation, as I told Mr. Brown, and I informed David Mellon down at Solid Waste that we all saw value in the backhoe replacement being scheduled for 2021. And what I wanted the board to do is also understand that when Highway put together their vehicle replacement plan, there were some other vehicles as well that we were looking at in 2021, understanding that some of these could be pushed out. We had some discussion about the fact that we just bought a heavy duty, a medium duty plow truck, and we really would like to try to get a season out of that before we make a full commitment to change over to that type of truck for the two old international trucks that we have. But Kevin is the person out there in the field operating this equipment. So I think he could, talk about that 350 pickup truck that the fire department transferred to your department, and the condition of the internationals plow trucks. And I think even your 450 1-ton that we have scheduled to be replaced. So Kevin, you had that schedule, right?
I do. I have it in front of me.
Yeah. Okay.
As of right now, I don't think we're getting old in our fleet, kind of like the fire department. We have some that, should have been replaced years ago. We've replaced 2 trucks. So we have the new Freightliner, we have the new Chevrolet medium duty. Ray said, like to run the medium duty for a year and make sure that it's, exactly what we expect it to be before we were to replace anything like that. But we do have some pickup trucks, the 2003 F350, the F450, which is 8 years old. That's starting to show its age in a bad way. Like the fire department said, before we have any major breakdowns, we did a training in that 450 already. Before we have any major breakdowns, especially during a snowstorm or whenever, we should be on more of a schedule for replacement. We just had some work done on the rubber tire backhoe. That was $5,200 for pin replacements in the rear. Talking to the mechanic down there, the life expectancy of those in this type of situation that we're in, shoveling salt and, running during snowstorms, it kind of shortens the lifespan. It doesn't have a lot of hours, but it definitely works every single day for both departments. And it's an intricate pot. That's really the most important piece right now. Is that what we were looking for, Troy?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
So my understanding from last meeting that this board made a motion for 2021, $150,000 for the backhoe, yes, $70,000 for the Ford F350, and then there was another motion that was made, or that was going to be made. I believe it was by Brian, that in 2022, $70,000 for a Ford F350 and $200,000 for a salt shed. In 2023, $70,000 for a Ford F350 and $150,000 for a parking lot. That was in 2023, excuse me. So I guess the question, is what is the board looking to do in terms of, is there an interest in adding to the amount for the winter? Are you looking for 2? I guess in the notes I said from the last meeting, that's what I'm looking at. The road agent may be interested in 2 more F650s. Question was asked by
that size.
Okay.
Well, like we said, the medium duty, we bought the 5500 Chevy, which is a 650 size truck. Okay. And like Troy said, we'd like to run it a season before we made a decision to expand on more of those. We don't want to jump into them and, without having a year under our belt. I personally believe that it's the right choice. But of course, we want to run it for a season before we purchase another one.
If it wasn't the right truck, how much does the price increase to go to the next level up?
Well, if we went up from the medium duty, which is right around 100,000 completely outfitted, it was, and then jumping up to the Freightliner like we purchased last year, I think you're talking about 68,000 more.
Okay. Just curious on what
You
to
go
put
from
in from
100.
planning.
Yeah, 100
You're
to
not knowing if that
168.
truck's going to be the workhorse for us, what do we allocate for dollars for subsequent years for added plow trucks?
I personally believe that this will be the perfect truck. I wouldn't have purchased this one if I didn't believe so. But of course, it's a new model. It's a new size for Chevrolet. Nothing's ever etched in stone, but it actually, it's 4-wheel drive, where the Internationals were replacing our 2-wheel drive. It has, it has all the capacity, the same size plows. It actually has more horsepower, but it's not as heavy, so you don't need a CDL license to drive it. So it doesn't have the spring rate that the Internationals have. To replace them, replace that truck like with the heavier truck, say the International for an International, you're talking around $150,000, $160,000. So, we went with the medium duty, figuring we'd be able to get drivers, easier, and it still has the same capacity as the Internationals.
I like where you're going with that, Steve, Mr. Weber, because ultimately from a planning perspective, and I know we talked about this, we want to plan somewhat risk adverse, right? We want to plan for worst case scenario in the event. And it's an easier conversation to have in a year or two from now to say, all right, well, hey, this Chevrolet that we purchased is really working well. It's a lot less money than we originally planned for. That's great. Or we include in our plan for coverage, because it's a much harder discussion to say, hey, we asked for 70 in our capital improvement plan, but now the cost is 160 because of this.
Yes.
Right. Oh, I understand where you're going with that.
Yeah, just not knowing the future, I think we need to put in the higher value.
Yeah, I like that idea. And then, of course,
All right, so
as
the
it works
higher
out,
value-
then we reduce it, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather reduce than add.
Okay. Anybody else?
I mean, I could pull the PO for Freightliner that we purchased last year and give an exact number. That's not an issue.
I think what I heard is rough estimates about $170,000.
And I think that's fine enough for our planning.
Yeah, I think that's fine enough for our planning.
Any other members of the board have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Kevin.
Yeah.
The 650s. So who can operate those? Is that what you were saying was not a Class A?
Well, yeah, the vehicle we just purchased, the new Chevy, is a Chevy 5500. It's a 21,000 GVW, so it's under the CDL license. So anybody with a regular license can drive it, but it has the plow capacity and the sanding capacity of the larger trucks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
What else was there from the highway department?
It was, when do we want to load the salt shed in the parking lot?
Right.
What year do we want that cadence to get in?
So like I said, I think Brian was going to make a motion last time that for 2022, 70,000 was going to be for the Ford F-350 and 200,000 for the salt shed. And then in 2023, 70,000 for a Ford F-350 and 150,000 for a parking lot. So that's what I have. And that when the vote was deferred, I think because Troy wanted to
Confirm.
get confirmed.
Yeah.
But
And I
now
think-
what I'm hearing, those 70,000s
Yeah.
are going to be 170,000
70,000.
for planning.
So I guess our question is to the road agent, does it meet your needs if the salt shed is in 2022 and the parking lot doesn't happen till 2023?
I'll be honest with you. My needs are vehicles over both of those.
Okay.
Those are both needs, but the vehicles would definitely take precedent. I have the ability to store salt now. It would just, improve that. And, the driveway we can keep patching, it's one of those you can push off, but the vehicles, updating the vehicles would be my priority.
Okay, thank you.
So maybe that's more of a 2025,
Yeah,
26.
definitely push it out the end.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, Kevin, if you constructed the salt shed, you'd want to construct that first, and then does the paving of the parking lot go hand in hand? I know it doesn't, but I mean, you're going to have construction going on, and you'd come in and repave everything up to the new salt shed, tie everything in nice to the entire site. Is that what you envision, or is this parking lot separate
Well, I mean,
from
you
the
know,
salt shed?
in a perfect world, having them both at the same time would be wonderful.
That's
but,
what I was wondering.
you know, I understand the limitations, and, you know, one before the other doesn't really, it's not necessary to do it at the same time.
Okay.
But it would, of course, it would be great to have both at the same time, but I understand financially, you know, we have other more important things.
Right. I was just wondering, as a construction project, that it made sense that you construct the salt shed, and then when you pave it, and the whole that project's done. But it could happen separately.
Yes, it could happen separately. That wouldn't be an issue.
So again, I think we wait until other later in the agenda, get the big picture if we're able to,
Sure.
and then make a decision.
Fully agree.
Makes sense. Okay. Anything else, Kevin, or?
No, I'm great, but thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you for being with us this evening.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Kevin.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Take care. Okay. Moving on to the library. Okay. So, do we have anyone from the library on the call? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm
Good
here,
evening.
Vicki, the director.
Present.
Hi, I'm here. This
Need
is
my
Donna
eyeglasses.
Ferguson, chairperson.
Nice to join us this evening.
So I think from a library perspective, where we left it was we were evaluating just, you know, these various options that we were throwing out there as a committee. And one of the things that, if I recall, again, I should have brought my computer and I apologize.
Okay.
But we were trying to think through the different options available as a town for library services, given the request of a potential $2 to $3 million new library facility, which was asked for. And as the committee was discussing those options, we were talking about, well, hey, is there an opportunity for us to leverage Hudson or a surrounding town and leverage their library services, which might result in a savings to us as a town? And then additionally, what we were thinking about from a library perspective is there any legal constraints, you know, over the current Aaron Cutler facility that, you know, kind of forces us to continue to fund and maintain that building itself, whether it be in a library facility or not? Is the town obligated to keep that building down the road?
Well, I'll address that one first. I think that's a question for the lawyer. You know, the town does have a copy of his bequest. It doesn't say specifically that it must always remain a library. So, you know, I don't know what the legal language would be that would require that. So, I mean, he did give the money specifically for a library to be named after him. But I don't know if there's anything legally in there that would bind it to remain that way forever.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And as far as Hudson, that is something that would have to be discussed with them. But I know that they are a bit undersized themselves. So I don't know that, you know, taking on people from Litchfield would be something that they would want to entertain. And I'm not sure what their non-resident fee is right now. It's at least $50 a person a year. It could be more, just to give you an idea. I mean, would your idea be to have that as a second location or as a replacement?
Well, and that's what the committee was discussing, right? I mean, it's not an easy conversation to have, but this committee is chartered with, looking at options, right? And so I think under that spirit, it was under a replacement type of option, right? Where we have a new library proposed for $2 to $3 million. Does it result in a significant savings at least $50 a person, right?
Correct.
To use the Hudson facilities
Right.
instead. So we were looking at those options only.
Okay. There is probably another option that you might consider as well, and that is, I don't know if you're aware of the GMILK Consortium. Depends on where you people have library cards at. So there is a consortium of libraries. It's Manchester, Nashua, Londonderry, Derry. There's quite a few where you can use your card at any of those libraries. There is a buy-in in that you have to have the same software running your system as they do, and they have a much more expensive system than we do. And I also think you can't just join. They don't just take everybody. I don't know what their current criteria is, but that would also be something that could be looked into. And so that would leave this building in operation, but to give people options of going to other libraries as well. I mean, right now we're able to supply them materials through our interlibrary loan program where we get books from all across the state, but they can't actually go to another library and use their card. So they can't go browse and, find the things they want.
Yeah, that's an interesting option, but I also don't think it solves the problem, right? Where we still are now presented with a request of $2 to $3 million for a new library facility, right? And if that is the option that ultimately is approved, we would still have to evaluate the costs of fixing or renovating the current facilities versus building new.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we have I don't know, do we have an idea of how much it would cost for renovating that, the current library? Not the old library.
I believe it was space constraints. So
I don't think we can, is what was presented, right? Because of the wetlands, space constraints, and a number of other factors that's off the table.
Right. It could be reused for another purpose in town, as I had mentioned, the senior center.
Yeah, and that's why I went down the road of, well, what's our legal obligations, right? Do we have to maintain it as a library, or is there an opportunity to repurpose it? But in either event, if we do repurpose it to, say, a senior center or whatever it might be, we still have to deal with the HVAC. We still have to deal with the wetlands. We still have to deal with septic. All of that doesn't go away.
Right.
And I guess it depends
I know.
what's in the document that was created at the time that,
Correct.
so it's all going to depend on that. I mean, certainly.
And I know Hudson was in some of the same position when they built their library, and I'm not exactly sure what they ended up finding out about their legal constraints, but I have a feeling that it needed to remain a library. And so it's still called Hills Memorial Library. The Friends of the Library has the lower level, and that's where they hold book sales. And then the upstairs is kind of used as meeting space, and I believe it gets used by the school district and any other group in town. So that's kind of how they retained their librariness. But we're also able to build new.
I don't know. Does Mr. Burke or Mr. Flynn have any comments?
What do you think?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm all set.
No, this is Sean Flynn. I do not.
So I think with that, maybe again, under the spirit of planning, right? We have to push this as presented, which is a $2 to $3 million request. Maybe you budget for $3 million, but with the idea that when this actually comes up, there's other options that should likely be considered. And I think in that interim period between now and whenever that is in the next 5-6 years, right, we need to do our due diligence and understand kind of the legal ramifications of that building. So I think as a next step, that absolutely makes sense to get our I's dotted and T's crossed so we have a true understanding of what the future state of that building can be.
Right.
Okay.
That makes sense.
I agree. Now, in order to do the investigation, we're going to have to somehow allocate funds ahead of time for engineering costs.
Good thing you're on the board.
And we got to figure out from a planning standpoint, where do we want to inject those into the overall plan?
And then the question is going to be, where are you going to put this new library? I guess is the next
Correct.
question.
And that's part of the whole investigation
Yeah.
process.
So from an options perspective, I mean, we proceed with option one, which is again, as written, you budget for the 3 million, I suspect, right? You plan for the 3 million and you plan it for somewhere in the 2025 time frame.
Yep. And maybe a year before that, you plan for the engineering costs.
Correct.
So does anyone want to entertain a motion to that effect? For the option, or do you want to defer this to other?
Deferring a lot to other.
Well, again, I think we need to see the big picture.
We do. We actually have to see how the numbers are going to roll out before we can make
Make a decision.
Yeah, make an educated decision where we're going to put it.
So we will just defer this.
Defer to other.
Defer to other. Okay.
Hopefully Jay's getting that spreadsheet running.
All right.
Where'd he go?
He's running the spreadsheet.
He's typing.
Well, thank you very much for being on the call. I guess unless the board has any other questions, I think we're good for now. So
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Vicky.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You bet.
All righty. Let's see, the next one, conservation. And I see Joan McKibben in the audience, who is the chair of the Conservation Commission. Joan, you want to introduce yourself to the board? Good evening.
I trust you got the map that we did up. I'm just realizing I totally.
I did receive it, yes. I don't know if the other members of the board did, but I did.
Email it with the color. And today we had a letter from Kate Stevens on the planning board.
Yes, and I'm actually going to read that into the record. Just a second here, hold on. It's a separate email. Let's see. Here it is.
Do you have it?
CIP input. Nope, that's not the one.
I have it here if you'd like me to read it.
Yeah, if you want to read it, Aaron, Andrew, that's fine.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So the Capital Improvement Committee received an email from Ms. Kate Stevens this morning, and it reads as follows. Good evening, CIP members. If you haven't already, please be sure to read the town's master plan and take note of how often it emphasizes preserving the rural and agricultural character of Litchfield. The master plan is created and updated with input from community surveys, and in most sections, that preservation is the top priority. Please use that to help guide your priorities while creating the capital improvement plan. The budget the Conservation Commission is requesting for specific parcels of land is small compared to other proposed needs of each department, but has proportionally large impact on that rural oasis that benefits every town citizen. Mrs. McKibben, here with us this evening, has worked hard to secure deals with these landowners, and her dedication and the community's trust in her should not be taken for granted. As a parent of small children, I absolutely agree a new elementary school is needed. However, the majority of the population that moves through the school is only there for a short time, while conservation land can be enjoyed by the townspeople and visitors alike. It's especially valuable that trails could potentially be created for people to access the library, just as trails and sidewalks are available to access our sports fields. These are not hopeful plans. They are specific parcels that will not be available next time around. Conservation land is something that most don't realize how much they appreciate it until it's too late. Thank you for your time. Ms. Kate Stevens, 9 Evergreen Circle.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. All right. So Joan, I know you provided us with a map. Maybe you'd like to just give a little presentation about the properties and.
Well, we were asking for $2 million over 5 years. The solid color parcels on the map are what the town owns and has been bought with conservation funding. When I added up, it was around 300 acres. The hashed parcels are, some were from the Regional Environmental Protection Project that we did years ago with NRPC, Regional Planning Commission. And then other parcels, specifically the one at the end of Meadowbrook Drive that goes towards 3A, and the one up at the north end are parcels that are of great interest to us. The ones down to the south are trying to protect the watershed of Chase Brook. And the one in the middle there, north of Dara Pond, again, is a watershed protection area. And we do have an appraisal on one property that the landowner did. I don't want to give away all my secrets, but came in at 529 for 29 acres. So land in southern New Hampshire is expensive. That's why we felt we could go with that amount that we asked for.
And Joan, does that also include the appraisals that you have to do for the?
That appraisals could come out of there, but we would be willing to take appraisals out of our land fund. We're not willing to eat into our land fund. Somebody had a good analogy that you don't want to take money out of your land fund as if pay the electric bill taking you out of your kids' college fund, that kind of idea. So that money that we get from current use set aside for land, we could use it for appraisals. As this money we could use for appraisals.
Okay.
Is there a timing when this property is coming available? Each parcel, because you have, if I look at it, you probably have 1, 2, 3, 4 different parcels.
The one in the middle of town, we're working on a grant right now. That is up for sale. The one at the north end is within 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any other questions for Joan? Okay.
So we have 2 out of the 4 parcels you think that will be available within 5 years?
Yes.
So from a planning perspective,
That's why I'm just, will those 2 pieces cost us $2 million, or will it be less with the appraisals than $2 million for those 2 pieces of parcel, those 2 parcels of land? Because we're trying to just look at 5 years right now.
Yeah.
And if, the north end is 5 years, okay, that one may sneak in. The middle one seems, you're going for a grant now, but the other 2 pieces, if you feel they're going to be outside of, the 5-year plan of this capital improvement, maybe we should push those down, and then the dollar value could be lower in something, that fit the plan much better.
I also don't see value in kind of dividing it equally over 5 years, right? Because that's not how you purchase or acquire parcels.
Correct.
Right.
It's acreage.
Rights wouldn't be divided equally, correct?
Yeah, so I think we'd have to kind of know what the acreage is for each one of these, and then figure out what the dollar value, presumed
Right.
dollar value would be.
And the one to the north end, I'm not interested. I don't know if they're interested in selling the whole thing or subdividing it and selling us the riverfront. But we've been talking to them for a number of years.
Yes, yeah.
So in terms of, again, planning for this evening, what is the will of the committee?
Do you know the rough acreage of the 2 pieces that are coming up in the next 5 years?
I'd say probably 50.
50 acres, okay. And you said 29 acres was 553?
29 was, 529. Praised at.
Well, I mean, from, the options that we had last time, option 1 would be 2021, would be to fund the 2 million for heritage preservation. which is what the Conservation Commission is looking for. Option 2 was to recommend to utilize Conservation Trust Fund and grants for land acquisition, trust fund balance to be 700,000. And then option 3 is not supported. So those were the 3 options that we had.
Again, like those were just ideas, right? Which is another idea can certainly come about tonight. So.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just listening that it doesn't seem that all that acreage is going to be available over the next 5 years. So at this point, do we want to fund, is the right request to fund all of it instead of funding what we think will be available in the next 5 years?
Yeah.
But land costs are only going to go higher,
Land costs could go up, so we're going to have to look at escalation, what you think it might be, and try to plug a number like we're just doing for fire trucks and highway department.
Maybe Mr. Burke has a comment?
I was actually just going to say, we're talking about, again, putting in the plan for the 2 million for all the pieces of land. But when it comes to a warrant article, you're going to pick and choose. So 1 year, like you said, it's not all going to happen in 1 year, or you don't put 5 million aside for 5 years. So if a piece comes up tomorrow, you put a warrant article in for, say, $500,000, and that's the piece of land you're looking for. I understand that the scope is like they'd like to spend $2 million on all these parcels of land, but we don't even know if they're going to be available for sale.
And that's a fair point. And to Mr. Weber's point, it's also a fair statement based upon what we've heard is that we don't even know if all this land being proposed is going to be available in the next 5 years. So are we funding too much money?
Yeah. But again, we're not funding anything right now. We're just simply putting it in the plan. Right. And we're not even allocating funds because we're just putting it there that there's that possibility that this is what the Conservation Department wants to purchase over the next 5 years.
But I also think
we may find out in 5 years or over the 5 years, maybe none of these parcels of land are for sale.
Correct. But I think it speaks back to what we did last time, that we're going to put everything into the plan and that we're going to make a recommendation on what we think it should be. So I guess part of my whole questioning was, we know they want 2 million, but is there a number that might be better that could fit the plan over the next 5 years, the one that we bring forward?
Again, you're putting 2 million in because that's what they're requesting. That's what they say they need. But the voters are going to say what they want. So at least the voters have an understanding over the next 5 years. Here are all the purchases the town wants to make. And they're going to decide which ones they're going to make. So I think if they've identified, no different than the other departments, that this is what they want to purchase, these are the parcels of land, I think it should go in the plan.
I have a question. So if we went with a warrant article, say a piece came up, we went with a warrant article, wouldn't that money have to be in the plan for us to put in a warrant article?
Well, no. So
no, my thought is, let's say, my thinking is that let's say the parcel A comes up for sale, then parcel A would go on a warrant article. You can't put a warrant article out there for $2 million to sit in the bank.
Right.
For future purchases.
yeah, but at the same time, you can't hold the landowner accountable for maintaining that land for the better part of a year per se, right? While we decide whether it's going to go to warrant or not, right? They have every option to do whatever they want with that land, I guess.
Right.
So the idea, and from what I'm hearing, is, and kind of the mindset is to be proactive about it, have funds allocated to it. So in the event a parcel does come up that's in the plan, then you have the money to buy it without having to wait until the next town meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's the case, I wouldn't vote for any of the 2 million. I would say utilize the $700,000 they have as far as either a straight out purchase, a down deposit, and then they'll put a warrant article in for the rest of the purchases.
Or to replenish the
like,
$700,000, like a capital improvement plan.
Right. Yeah. I can live with that.
I mean, that is
not going to ask the taxpayers for $2 million to put in the bank.
Mr. Carter, can you say that again?
Sure. So what I was saying is, the capital improvement plan, what the Conservation Commission has approximately 700,000 in funds today, currently. They could use that 700,000 for land acquisition in the event it comes up without having to go to warrant article currently. The idea behind it, and I think what Mr. Burke is saying, and the idea is a valid one,
Yep.
right? Is let's use that like a fund that we already have on the town side and on the school side, a capital reserve fund, where if you have a need, you're using money out of that fund to take care of that need or satisfy that need. And then at the next town meeting, we would restore those funds based upon vote and the will of the voter.
Yep. So that's exactly it. So with that being said, do we know or have an estimate of what the highest price piece of property is that would it cost? Do we have an estimate on that?
What is the question? The highest cost?
Highest, I guess,
Highest
what's the
price.
highest price for a piece of property?
Yeah.
And I don't think you'd know because you have to have everything assessed and
You
what
have
is
to
at the
have it
time up. I mean,
appraised,
right
right.
now, we know that the piece that you looked at is, $529,000 for 23 acres.
Right,
That's the going rate we know right now.
right.
And the difficulty of this one is everything else is tangible. Put up a building, we know it costs. We know that it can happen tomorrow. A truck can be bought. This is, when is it available? And nobody knows when
And
land's going to be
when is
available.
it assessed? You have to have
And
the
what is it
assessment
assessed at?
within
Right.
60
Because
days.
the piece you're looking at now is not riverfront. Now, riverfront property could get assessed at a higher rate.
Right.
So it's very difficult from that standpoint.
The one good
But we're
thing,
looking at,
one good thing the town has in its favor here is that we do have $700,000 in the conservation fund. And I think there's a farmland protection fund as well that's got like another 100,000 in it. I think that was specifically for farmland, whereas the conservation is under the control of the Conservation Commission, and they would expend that at their discretion. But the great thing is that if you have a property owner who comes forward and approaches the Conservation Commission or the town, you have the ability, if they really want their property to be placed in conservation and not developed, I've been involved in transactions where you sit down, you negotiate with the property owner, you come to an agreement, and you enter into a purchase and sale agreement, and you may put $25,000 down and as a deposit, and it's based on contingencies. And I've seen transactions where it's based on applying for a certain grant application, and it's based on passage of a warrant article. If those grant applications and warrant articles are not approved, then you might lose your $25,000 deposit. But if you have a property owner that's really they want this property to be in conservation, at least you have money right now in capital reserve funds where you can put money down, get the property appraised, come to an agreement, and everything is based on, it's just like a closing on your house. Everything's based on, certain conditions. And one of the conditions would be obtaining funding. Some towns don't have any funds available to even put, a significant amount down. But even in that case, when you have a property owner who's really willing to work with the town, they may enter into a purchase and sale agreement and say, I'll wait until March. If you get a bond, that's great. If not, then I'm going to sell.
and I absolutely agree with you 100% because I can imagine that these parcels of land, whomever they're owned by, have already had conversations with what they'd like to do with the land. Conservation Department has already said they've identified these properties they want to purchase. It's not like they just went to the map and said, we'd like this hunk of land. So I'm sure they've already had conversations. I'm certain they've already identified this is where they would like that property to go. So I think you're absolutely right that, you put a deposit on it, contingent on whatever factors, and then you go forward. And with $700,000 in the bank, that's a lot of power.
But I still think the capital improvement plan needs to reflect that the town may, over the next 5 years, consider investing $2 million in open space preservation.
I agree, but again, it's consider we're not going off and doing the warrant article next year for $2 million
No.
to sit in the bank.
So
Yep.
Jay, you have any input on this? Because I'm sure you've worked with how communities reflect their open space preservation in their capital improvement plan.
Well, yeah, I mean, it certainly is more than one way to do it. I guess just as a starting point, I thought I heard Joan's request a little bit differently. I thought the request was for $500,000 a year. I could be wrong, and my assumption was that the request was that those funds would go to the conservation fund. But again, I could be totally wrong on what I was hearing. But putting that aside, I think there's a couple of ways to do it. So if $2 million is the total spend, is the total ask, and if you've got $750,000 already in funding available, you don't need to reflect that $200,000 is, going to be coming directly on the tax rate. You can show $2 million. You can show as a source of funds the existing conservation fund for that, and then a balance over some period of years based on your best guess as to when those properties might be acquired. So for planning purposes, you can show a dollar amount per year above and beyond the $700,000.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Jay, when this was first presented, it was $2 million plus what they had in their fund.
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
But 500,000 over the 5 years might be an option to do it that way too.
But that's also $2.5 million.
And you wouldn't be.
Good point.
The CIP is a wish list. You're not going out to raise these funds.
And we're running a 6-year plan right now.
Yeah.
So that would be $3 million.
Yeah. Right. So the 500,000 math doesn't work.
No.
Okay.
Right. I also,
Right.
I don't necessarily, it's the will of the committee, but I don't necessarily like funding it in equal amounts over a period of X years.
Increments.
Yeah. I think the way you fund this is it's budgeted for whatever year makes sense. And that's what's put into the plan in the full dollar amount. Right? Because again, you could have 500,000 this year, but you could have a land acquisition that costs $1.5 million. Then what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think you need that money set aside for this very specific purpose.
And that would be.
I don't think the money is set aside. I don't think it's set aside. I think it's more, this is the anticipation over the next 6 years that conservation is looking for $2 million.
I agree.
And
I agree.
That falls in that.
I agree with you, right? I agree with you. We're not spending any money. I am crystal clear on that.
You gotta
Right?
put a
It's going to
value
the
in-
voters.
Yeah.
I 100% agree, right? But we have to plan on it accordingly. My thought is we plan it in one chunk for one specific year as opposed to dividing it up.
I agree.
Okay. And it's difficult. It's like you don't know what years they're going to be available.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So if that's the case, I go at year 6.
Do you make a motion?
I make a motion to put the $2 million in for year 6.
There you go.
That's what, 2025?
That's 2025. Looking at Mr. Rowe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2025.
2026.
2026. All right.
26, okay.
NRPC overruled.
We were close.
All right, 2 million in 2026. There's a motion.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Do I have any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of, so I guess what's the motion now?
To place $2 million in our capital improvement planning committee in the year of 2026.
2026. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's 2 opposed.
Fails. 220.
And abstained. Okay, motion
Failed.
Fails.
fails 2-2. Yeah, 0. Okay.
So you're back to square one.
Back to square one. Let's go back. Okay.
Let's look at all of them.
All right. Let's see.
So just curious, I mean, so for Mr. Flynn and Mr. Croto, may I ask why the vote no? What didn't you like about that motion?
I don't know. I think that for me personally, I think it's important that we at least have some sort of funding there for, for 2021. I think the 2 million, I think represents a good number in terms of, preservation of trying to preserve land. And I think to continue to allocate those funds for that preservation is something that is part of Litchfield. I think it's part of the master plan in terms of our trying to develop and build the character of the community. But that's what I feel. But that's my opinion, and it's not the will of the board. But I mean,
Mr. Flynn?
I mean, in my opinion, also, I wrapping my head. I feel it should be. They have 700,000, Mrs. McKibben, but to have the money in hand, like we're saying, they're sitting on the money, or to have the money in hand for more of a down or the purchase. It sounds like they've already talked to landowners, but they already maybe have discussions, something in the works. And if parcel A were to come up for sale, and it sounds like they wouldn't have the funds for 5 more years. So aside from some of our other options with the other departments, what I'm getting from all this is that I'd like to have money sooner, so that they have them.
So let me throw out an idea, right, and see if this will be received by the committee. What if you fund, and I'm just throwing it out there, 500,000 in year 1, 500,000 in year 3, 500,000 in year 6. So overall, you're funding $1.5 million. Plus, we know that there's a 700,000 in their fund balance. That in the event in 2026 that money needs to be used, they have extra already set aside in addition to the $1.5 million that we're planning. And then in 2026, if they do use the 700,000 for land acquisition or wherever it might be, at that point in time, they can come to a warrant article to replenish those funds. So you fund $1.5 million out of the 2,000. You fund $1 million. Sorry, go ahead.
Can be used right now.
The 700,000 can be used today. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
Conservation has those
Right,
funds.
those funds already exist.
So to do the other funds, there'll have to be a warrant article to appropriate that amount of funds to be put into an account. And that would be at the will of the voting, and that's how we load it into the capital improvement plan.
Joan, what do you think about that?
So let me
Yeah, that could work. The second option.
let me play devil's advocate as far as that thinking. If that's the case, then what we ought to do is put in 1.4 million for 2 fire trucks that we might need later on. And what we ought to do is put in X amount of money for other items we need down the road. You're talking about parcels of property that you don't even know if they're going to fail. So raising the funds, or saying in a year we're going to raise the funds, is not the right thing to do. If that's the case, then let's go back, like I said, to the fire trucks. Let's raise the money for both of them in 1 year, and in case we need it the next year, we'll spend it.
Again, this is just a plan. This isn't raising any money.
I know. I understand that, but at the same time, we're putting it in a certain year, and we don't even know if we're going to need it in that particular year.
That's true.
I think in all the other elements we've spoken about, we know what years we want to put them in, and we know what the need is.
Right, but again, we just voted as a committee, right, to push this off into 2026, and it was a deadlock, 2-2, right? So what
Yep.
can pass this committee in a reasonable manner,
Right.
right? Is the, year 1
And
3 6 a nice alternative?
I think it is. I do.
I mean, from a planning standpoint, it allocates the money. It's all in there.
It's in there.
And it's still going to come down to the will of the voter. Does it pass or not?
Right. Exactly.
Agreed. So if that's the case, then they're asking for 2 million. We should give them 2 million and break that over, whatever years you want to break it over, put it in that way.
All right, so the amount would be $666,666 in year 1, 3, and 6.
Okay.
There you go.
So is
Is that a motion?
I was going to say
500,000 was a more rounded number.
We're getting technical. So we have a motion to.
I'll second.
You'll second it? Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Do I have discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Right, for discussion, Mr. Chair. if I
Yes,
could
go
ask,
ahead, I'm sorry.
not sure if this happened in other votes.
I'm sorry.
This is for clarification,
Yes,
and I'm
go
not
ahead.
sure if this happened in other votes. Can a non-voting member make the motion?
I didn't make the motion.
No, he didn't make it.
I'm sorry, who did?
Motion was made. Who did make the motion? Oh, wait a minute.
I thought it was made, so I seconded it.
Oh,
I'll make the motion. And
That's what I thought. Okay, no, I was like,
in 1, 3, and 6 at $667,667.
$666,666.
That's it. Yes.
Say that 5
Six
times.
six six
No,
six six six.
Okay. So we have a motion by a voting member,
Who made the motion?
Mr. Weber.
Mr. Weber is making the
Thank you.
motion. Okay, yep, no problem.
A few people I can see.
That's all right. So Mr. Weber made the motion. Do I have a second to the motion? I'll second it. Oh, you'll second?
Sean did.
Okay. All right. I have a motion, I have a second. Do we have any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 4-0-0. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Joan, we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
You won't see them, but you'll see them.
And the 18th will be live,
That's right.
no
right.
public. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. Okay.
Recreation. Get
Recreation.
Mr. Ruggles on
We
the
do
line.
have Mr. Ruggles.
We do.
He's been waiting
Can you
patiently.
hear me or no?
We can
Yes.
hear you. Yes. Good evening.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. It was echoey last time I signed on here to do this.
Okay.
So I'm Andy Ruggles. I'm with the Recreation Commission, also living in town at 54 Century Lane. And I was tasked to look into pricing to get the Dara parking lot paved. So does everybody have the attachments that I sent over to Troy and the rest of the crew? Troy, did I send that to you?
When? Today or?
Oh no, this is like forgive us because we were supposed to be here a month ago.
Oh.
But I sent it over quite a while ago.
Okay.
Hold on, I can pull it up.
So I think that'd be a no.
Unless you can tell me the date, maybe I
Let me
can
just
find
find
it.
it.
Yeah, I don't remember receiving any information, but
I
if you
don't
could talk
remember
through
either.
it, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. To
Or
do the paving,
You have it, I believe. Sorry, you have it, you can share through the WebEx as well, I believe, right?
I do have it somewhere here. Just find it.
No rush.
Yeah, so we were talking as a group in rec, and one of the bigger safety issues out there at the Dara Pond is the parking lot, especially in the wintertime. I'm not sure if you guys have been out there in the wintertime, but it turns into a giant skating rink, mainly because it's poorly graded and it's not paved. And so they asked me to pull together some pricing to
repave that, and essentially these are the numbers I came up with. The parking lot itself is approximately 45,000 square feet. We believe that we would need about a 16-inch gravel subgrade. This is, I'm just a little background. I work for an engineering company, so I've got a little knowledge in this. So the cost of the gravel itself would be $65,000 approximately. It's 2,300 cubic yards at $29 a yard. The grading itself to grade the basically to pitch everything so you don't get standing water all over the parking lot, is 34 cents per cubic foot. Again, there's 45,000 cubic feet, coming up with a total number of $15,300. Finally, you would have the pavement itself, and we didn't really think there was a need to do a top coat. We were thinking just a 4-inch binder course, and we calculated it to be approximately 815 tons of pavement. And laid pavement cost is $87 per ton, for a grand total of right around $71,000. Now, also, we were thinking that we'd need some leaching catch basins. Approximately 4 would be adequate for that area. Each one can drain about a little over 10 to 15,000 square feet. We would have 4 of them, and the total cost of the 4 catch basins would be $10,000. All-in cost for grading, gravel, pavement, and drainage would be $161,000. So, as a commission, that's what we were looking for.
And what year would you like to request the paving be completed?
I would say as soon as possible. Obviously we've been dealing with this for years, so it's not like a huge rush. But
so you're looking at 2021? Be the
2021.
It is bad out there in the winter.
Well, Winterfest isn't the point to have something there. No,
Skate around.
Yeah, all kidding aside, there's work I noticed going on at Dara Pond now. What's happening in that parking lot now on the far left-hand side as you're looking at it?
That would be the telecommunication tower.
Ah, okay. All right.
Mr. Brunel.
I thought that was going at Campbell.
He's got his little erector set out
I
there.
thought it was going at Campbell.
No, because of space concern.
Got it. Okay. Does that make the square footage a little bit less?
Can we pave it in that budget?
Probably not. It's not a very big tower. Sorry, I'm still looking for this thing here. I know I went through it all, but
So the request is $161,000, technically $300 for 2021.
correct. Or it doesn't have to be 2021 if it doesn't fit into the budget, but we think it's something that needs to be done within the next 5 years, I would say.
Okay.
Are there any, in terms of sources of funding, I'm just curious, have you looked at grants or anything like that to offset costs? Just curious.
I haven't. I'll be perfectly honest. I haven't done that. It doesn't mean there aren't any, but I'm not sure that we could get any.
Whatever recreation grants are out there, you normally, there's very limited grants, but normally those grants would be seeking funding to build a new facility where you already have an existing parking lot. Improvements to that existing parking lot, it'd be very difficult to get grant funding.
Mhm.
I know you talk up the safety concerns because of the icing and just the general condition, handicapped accessibility, all that kind of stuff, but still I think it'd be hard to get funding.
What about striping? Painting parking spots, right? I mean,
Right.
if you're paving it, we should come up with some plan for that.
To pay to, yeah.
Yeah, I should have added that in there as well.
Well, Troy, do you have any idea with
Is it-
striping and painting of our roads? We just did 2 miles of it. Do you remember roughly what it was to do 2 miles?
Parking lots are different than the straight, yellow line or white fog lines. But my guess to stripe that parking lot, brand new pavement, you're somewhere around $8,000 to $10,000.
Wow.
Maybe you round it up in planning and you say 175. Again,
That's what I would think,
nice
yeah.
round number.
Well, first of all, you don't know what the cost of asphalt's going to be. It's going to be oil dependent. So
It's 425 per 18-foot line, so I'd have to do some math here and figure out exactly.
That could be high.
But I could plop that into
25 is
CAD
too
and
far.
get you some better numbers on that.
Yeah, but if we plan around 10 to 15,000 as a contingency for striping and fluctuation in oil prices for asphalt, that should get you very close to where you need to be.
yeah, I mean, if you say there's 50 spots in there, there's 2 lines, there's 100 stripes you got to do. I think
I'm
175.
sorry, is the quote that you received just for paving?
Yes.
It would be for the gravel, the grading, and the paving. This is not a quote we received. This is using WS means.
Okay, so we haven't even talked about drainage then.
Yeah, well, the catch basins were
drainage.
added.
Yeah, drainage was included in there to be for leaching catch basins.
Okay.
Because I mean, you have ample sandy soil out there that I don't think you'd have any problem.
Well, I think we've all seen the skating rink that appears in the winter. That's why I'm asking as far as what drainage was looked at.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And that's kind of, why we wanted to grade all this thing out and make sure it's, it's functioning properly.
I think it's a parking lot that's long overdue to be paved.
Agreed.
Why, just curious, why Dara over Sawmill?
I think mainly the drainage issues. Sawmill has a nice pitch to it. The water runs off it well. It's been ditched out. It's stoned very well.
Slightly
and
too
Dara,
It's good
it just
speed
really
control.
sticks out because it's very flat in there. There's nowhere for the water to go. You really need to do so, especially in the wintertime. In the summertime, it's really
Well,
not.
I was just going to say that the main reason Sawmill is not utilized in winter. Dara is. Dara is utilized for basketball and other sports inside the building. And Sawmill, they don't even plow the parking lot.
Good point.
It's closed. And you also have a very active pickleball with some seniors. So in the wintertime, it's very difficult to maintain.
It's a tough parking lot.
It's a tough park.
We're there for baseball clinics and it's miserable.
Yeah.
So I say we default the year of this until other, to see where we can actually put it in the spreadsheet.
Okay.
I do think it's, to my opinion, it's an ask that I think should be sooner than later, just because of the liability of it and how much it's utilized for talent. But until we see how the numbers are rolling up, we have to kind of figure out what year to place it in.
Just curious, and this is a question. This is more of a question down the road than it is for. There's nothing to do with the parking or the paving or everything. I don't know. Does the Rec Commission have any plans at some point in the future to build a recreational facility at Dara? I know we have Talent Hall. I know that
Failed at warrant.
Last warrant article failed.
Last one article failed. Okay.
There was no money allocated to it, anything. It was just, would
and
you
that
want to
was
investigate this?
Keep in mind, that was a non-binding, we wanted to throw the question out there to the town and just be like, how does everybody feel about it? And we got a pretty clear, resounding no, that people are not ready to invest in a recreation facility. So.
Okay. I was just curious. I know that, Talent Hall it's an old building and it's been there a long time. And, maybe.
Yeah, I think the general consensus with the town is, in just kind of what I've heard around town, is that there's bigger priorities than a recreation center, schools, whatever.
On that,
things that people think.
I'm glad, Mr. Ruggles, you came to present tonight because, one of the things that as we were evaluating town facilities at last year's budget cycle, right, we went through and walked through all the facilities and we walked through Talent Hall, right? One of the key areas of that building that was discussed as an eminent problem is the floor structure of that building, right? And how the actual parquet or wood floor, and we all know that it's in kind of different pieces and all kind of just put together in its current format, but the braces underneath that building are deficient and are at risk of breaking, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I would think that from a recreation committee perspective, that would also need to be factored into the capital improvement plan, certainly over the next 6 years, given that it's in a dire state. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on the floor within Talent Hall?
Yeah, I do. I'm well aware there are some structural deficiencies. One of the issues that was brought to my attention is that if we get into a certain dollar value to fix structures of the building, then we get into having to make it the bathrooms handicap accessible, and then it just which they should be anyway, probably. But it's just it spider webs and keeps growing and growing, and then all of a sudden you're into $500,000 into this building that's pretty much falling down anyway.
So I guess it just, I don't think there's any action from the committee tonight because,
Right, no.
but ultimately in terms of a plan over the next 6 years, should we also think about what the long-term vision of Talent Hall is?
Right.
And where we're going to need to invest money.
Right. And I think that's where where I was going with that is that, because it is an old building, it's been there a long time. It's something that may be considered in the future, if people at some point do want to, they may not want it now, but if they want it in the future, what's that going to look like? And if they have to do renovations to Town Hall for whatever reason, what's that going to look like? So,
I thought it was going to be painted this year. Is that true?
Mr. Ruggles, do you know that the rec commission's had any discussion about painting the exterior of the building?
It was brought up. I don't think anything was ever firm.
Okay. Okay.
So no, I don't believe so. I know they were going to repaint redo some of the flooring and repaint the flooring inside. I'm not sure where that stands right now. That was in somebody else's court. I'll tell you what, I'll make a couple notes here and I'm going to inquire about this stuff at our next meeting. I think it's the 14th.
Thank you.
okay.
No problem.
Sean, Brian, do you have any other questions you want to ask?
No, not this time. Thank you.
Okay.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I'm gonna have to sign off.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, did you hear me?
Yeah. Can you just repeat what you said? I'm sorry. Got very mumbled.
Yeah, no. I said, no, I don't have any questions. Unfortunately, I do need to sign off at this point.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good. Well, thank you for joining us and we'll see you soon.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah,
Good night.
thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Okay.
I do, Mr. Ruggles, this is Sean Flynn. I agree with the parking lot issues and that needs to get done. Maybe, but for further thought, I don't know how the number of parking. There's some pretty constructive parking there during events. But can this maybe be put into a package? Is there any space? Make it maybe a little bigger or squared up, more constructive?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we could actually absolutely investigate. Obviously it's going to add to the cost because you're going to have more square footage. But yeah, I can absolutely take a look at it and get back to you.
Okay.
I know, actually, just a side note here, one of the issues that we have kind of going on right now out there is an issue with the gate and cars going down to the basketball area and who should have access and if people should, and maybe we could configure the lot in a way that would provide access to people to go down there and maintain safety, for A, the playground, and to B, keep people off the basketball courts. That's, I guess that's one of the big concerns.
Don't we
But,
want people
yeah,
on
I
the
mean, I
basketball
think-
courts to use them?
So it is people,
No.
they were driving onto the
More
court?
of a vehicle.
Driving.
So we
onto
put a
the-
Yeah,
guardrail up
somebody
there
driving
already.
onto
I
the
saw
court.
Yeah.
And now the other issue is
Yeah.
the playground safety. So the plans to put another guardrail there. And at the last meeting, we spoke about putting a couple handicap spots down there and then families with small children.
But how do they get back there, right?
And then a drop off. They have to get back there. And then in order to do that, if someone violates, what do you do? So now we're talking about an ordinance for ticketing. So now you got to get with police, get an ordinance to ticket. So we spent a long time, the rec commission last week talking about this. What's the future plan we can do down there and make it more accessible? So right now people getting down there, now they have to portage canoes, kayaks, all the way down there. You got a couple small children, you go to play, you try to get them out of there. First of all, you're struggling because they're tired and they don't want to leave. And you're carrying all the stuff back down. So how do we get a little more use for everybody down there?
And honestly, maybe it's better off just to have parking all the way down through there, because as Mr. Flynn said, sometimes parking is an issue out there. Say you get a big softball tournament, they end up opening that gate and parking along the entire roadway anyway. So maybe it's something that we look into.
You open that gate, I imagine a lot of busted windows.
Yeah. You'd have to go with higher fencing and so forth because all the umpires right now park down there. All the coaches park down there during a softball tournament.
Hey, I just had a thought. Not that I really would like to approach this project this way, but in the winter time, for parking of vehicles for different rec committee activities going on, could you actually do a phase 1 and a phase 2 where you would pave coming in and doing one side where you have the paved parking lot and tying it all into Town Hall, leaving the other side gravelled, and maybe that's more of a available, in the spring, summer, and fall. But then you have a paved portion that's there for the winter time. What's the demand in the winter versus summer? Like I would assume softball draws a lot of vehicles. Is soccer being played there too in the fall? No. Is it just,
when the high school will play there sometimes.
Will they? I didn't know that.
So if
Yeah.
you're having a practice or a basketball game in the wintertime, I mean, how many cars are you parking? Could you, if
You
you
got to think every Saturday morning you have the rec leagues playing there, so you have people coming and going
right.
for the rec
But
league.
if you had one side that was paved with drainage and everything, would that one side accommodate that activity? I was just wondering, in the summertime of the softball, you have a lot
you
more
need more.
parking demand
Could
than
one
you
side
do
do it?
in the winter.
It's not a bad idea. To me, it seems
Just a
very
phase 1, phase 2. I just thinking.
haphazard, right? If you're going to do it, do it.
That's what I said. I wouldn't want to do it that way but just knowing money's tight,
And I'm
it's just not a
concerned
bad
about,
approach.
Remobilization costs. If you have all the equipment out there and they're doing it all at once, I don't know if it would cost you more in the long run because you had to, remobilize all the equipment back out there a second time. Just a thought.
In my world, it always costs more to do it a second time. It's cheaper to do it all at once.
Sounds like we need to contact Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes.
And like I said, yeah, I mean, this was just straight up WS means. These are construction costs based on a book of the average values for New England the last, 5 years. So, it may be a less expensive, because we have a paving plant that's 2 miles down the road. You know what I'm saying? This is definitely could fluctuate.
Okay.
But I'm thinking this is on the high end.
That helps.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Andy. Be well.
Yes.
Yeah, you too.
Take care. So we're going to defer this to other.
Which brings us to other on our
Which brings us to
agenda.
other now.
Okay, well, now that we're here.
Is other still with us?
Yeah, right. Okay. So, yes, just give me a moment here. Ooh.
So if I may, we have,
Yes.
from a committee decision perspective, we have the fire department,
Yep.
the highway department, the library, as well as recreation.
As well as recreation.
We shouldn't have any more tie votes because it's three voting members.
Correct.
Right. We eliminated that problem.
Okay.
Okay. So we want to tackle fire first?
Well, I think before we do that, right, the idea was to understand from Jay what the big picture was. So I guess,
Okay.
Jay, if you're still with us, maybe it makes sense for you just to kind of summarize where we are with all the committee actions to date, what we've talked about this evening, and kind of lay the land for us for the big picture. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. So what would probably be helpful for the next meeting is for me to just put everything that we have to date on the spreadsheet, so that everybody can kind of see where we're at. I mean, ballpark, just in looking at what we have for conversation now, we've got high years in year one, year three, depending on where we put Parks and Rec in particular. If we put Parks and Rec in year one, then we've got a particularly high year in year one. Year three is high, and year six was low, but now it's higher because of the way we space the conservation funds. If I don't look at Parks and Rec and I take out for now conservation funds, we're averaging in the 3.5 to 3.8 range per year. So those are, kind of the variables. I don't know if that's helpful for everybody, just if you're thinking dollar wise. But right now we're pretty high in year one. Just things to think about is when the schools kick in. So I know earlier we were talking about spacing out some of the, road agents projects, the DPW types of projects. There's actually not a lot of benefit to that. The school costs are going to kick in most significantly in 2022, 2023. That's kind of where you have less flexibility. So, I mean, again, I don't know if saying that is helpful, but I think what probably just makes sense right now is to put everything that you've approved onto a spreadsheet, and everything that we haven't taken action on, leave as requested, if that makes sense.
So with that, we're not going to take action on fire, highway, library, or rec.
I guess until we meet again and we see how everything rolls into the plan. Because he's going to load everything based off of the requested date. So at least the monies will be in there.
Right.
It's the will of the committee. I guess my view is, make the decisions, review the plan, and then make another decision to change it if you need to.
Yeah. So what's driving the majority of the money for 2021? Fire truck? What else was big for 2021?
You have a lot of highway department requests in 2021 also.
Right.
So you've got the fire truck, you've got, at this point, at least what I have are most of the highway department requests. And then again, what you decide to do with the conservation funds. You've also got under the schools, the energy-wide district
That's right.
efficiency improvement.
1.7 million. Yeah,
That's huge.
1.3 million.
Right. So that's a big item also.
That's what it is.
I was wondering what was driving that one so high.
It's Mr. Izabicki's fault.
Right.
He's on now. Okay.
What did I do now?
Got
Exactly.
that. It's all good. It's all good.
Just $1.5 million.
Yeah, that's all.
I mean, it's the will of the committee and what to do with fire, highway, library, and rec. If you want to wait, I mean, it's up to you. So
I kind of think we just get it into plan now, and then at least Jay can come to us at that point and lay the whole thing out.
exactly.
So we took action. So we have to take action on
So
highway.
highway,
So want to take it from the top with fire? Okay, so with fire,
Yeah.
with the chief presented this evening, he presented the need for still both the tanker as well as the engine for 2021 and 2022 respectively. There is an option to defer the engine until a later period. However, for the purposes of planning, the dollar amounts don't change.
Correct.
Right, and so
It's
what?
just more loading.
If I remember, what I heard was 662,000 for 2021, 623,000 for 2022. Again, 2021 would be the pumper truck at 1,800 gallons, and 2022 would be replacement of the engine.
And Jay, you were saying 2023 is pretty heavily loaded?
Yes, that's a school.
That's the school, yeah.
Yes.
So by pushing the truck another year, it's not gonna,
And you're actually, if you push it a year, you're actually pushing it
2 years by the time they get it, and that's already a 95.
Correct.
Because the one for this year is 91, so that's a 95.
So you're at a 30-year-old truck by then.
So I'll make a motion that we put the fire in for 2021 and 2022 as proposed.
okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I'll second it. Discussion? Although, go ahead, is someone?
Bring it on.
Okay, sorry. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Those opposed? Abstained? Motion passes 3-0-0. Okay. So that's fire.
For highway, what we heard from the road agent this evening was the strong desire to keep the equipment at being the Chevrolet 5500. He believes that's going to be the right vehicle going forward. However, they want to test it for this current year. So from a planning perspective, in terms of replacement trucks, do we budget at the 5500 price, or do we budget at the Freightliner price, which is $170,000 a truck versus $70,000 a truck for the Chevrolet 5500?
So I think we need to do it for the larger value, just because we don't know if it's going to be the workhorse or not.
So the 170,000.
170 in it, because I'd rather have the plan, all of a sudden it's $70,000 instead of $170,000. At least that way, from a planning standpoint, we have it in there.
I think what you do then, and I'm just, trying to make life easy, I believe 2 additional trucks were requested in the plan. Is that correct?
Correct. And I was thinking of pushing salt shed and parking lot to like 2026.
Yeah. So you do the trucks in 2022 and 2024.
Yep. And then I was going to push everything else in my motion.
Yep. Okay, good.
So we already voted on the first one. So I'll make a motion that we add to the plan a $170,000 for a truck in 2022, 2024. And then we push the salt shed and parking lot, which is $200,000 for the salt shed, $150,000 for the parking lot, into 2026.
Okay. I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second? I'll second. Do we have discussion?
So, the backhoe is already on record of being 2021, right?
Yep, that's already in, and the other plow truck's already in.
Yeah, okay.
From last meeting.
Right. Okay. Hearing no further discussion, all those who signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstain, motion passes 3-0-0. And just for point of clarification, and I don't mean to just say, but we're okay with 3 members voting because we don't.
3 out of 5, right? So we have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we have 3 out of 5.
Well, usually, I mean, a quorum is 4, but I can't got it. Okay. Just wanted to.
Because you're on a bigger board.
Right, that's it. All right, so the motion passes. Moving on to
Library. So library is a more difficult decision.
Yeah.
What we heard tonight from Vicky was the request of 2 to 3 million. So you budget for 3 million, right? But we don't have any understanding, which was kind of the hope for this evening, on what the future state of the Aaron Cutler building itself should be. So you're making essentially a motion tonight without an understanding of the bigger picture of what that building, what the future state is.
So it probably would not be a good idea to.
No, I think it's one of those, because it's tough. I mean, we don't have a location.
Yeah.
We know nothing, so we have to put in engineering costs. So we're gonna have to somehow put engineering costs in some year. We don't know what the future of that building is or what it says within.
Is it in a trust? What is it? I mean,
Yeah, so I mean, that's a very hard one to act on.
So do you then essentially, if I recall, option 3 is you do nothing, right, for the purposes of planning, and then it's essentially it remains as is for the next 6 years.
Yeah. I mean, up to you. I mean, if you. Yeah, I mean.
Jay, are there any other options you can think of?
I guess we're stumped here. Bunch of bookworms that we are.
I mean, realistically, you've gone through, several different options. I heard one new option tonight about a membership that might be available from other municipalities. But I mean, realistically, your only other option is to put it off to another meeting if you think that you're really going to get enough information to make a difference. Obviously, the challenge is everything that's really been noted is we do have a cost. It's an estimated cost. We don't know where a new library would be built. We don't know whether, I know there was a suggestion that it would be next to Town Hall. I don't know whether there is sufficient land or an available site. It's not for me to have an opinion or to say, but it does feel as though there's not enough information to make a reasonable decision at this point.
I agree.
I do too.
That just seems to be my sense.
Before we close that thought, right, Mr. Brown, do you have any understanding of how many people live in town that might be eligible for a library card?
No.
Not even a rough 10,000 people. I don't know.
It'd be every resident, right?
I mean,
every resident.
I mean,
can get a
I don't
card
know
all the way through, and there's
what age group?
700.
Well,
How many
you're
residents?
talking children. You're talking.
Well,
adults.
everyone's eligible. So if there was
9,000 people
say
or
that-
whatever.
yeah.
We got. What do we have? 8,000.
700 or something.
8,300 or something. I think.
All right, so if you take 8,300 and just say everyone's eligible, but not everybody's going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So you cut that number in half, right? And then you times that times 50, which
Because I looked it up, it is 50 for a non-resident.
so it's $207,500.
But it's not clear, is it $50 per person or $50 per family?
I don't know.
That's the.
I'm calculating it per person.
Yep.
Right. So 207,500, assuming half the town
Mhm.
uses that service at $50.
Yeah.
And I guess that's a year.
Right.
As opposed to our library cost today is $225,000 and maybe a little bit higher than that per year. So current cost of that library is about $225,000 to $230,000 a year. If my budget math is fresh, I think it's probably about right.
Probably pretty close.
It's an interesting concept
Yeah,
because
it
right,
is.
right
It is.
there, you're already saving the town money.
We are, So I'll make a motion that we don't act on the request for the library. As tough as it is, I don't think it's the right thing for us to do until we explore the other options.
Okay, so I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second? I'll second it. Is there any?
What is the motion, please?
The motion is that we're not going to support what we're basically the library this time around. It's not a viable option.
All right, thank you.
And just to clarify, in CIP parlance, that means that it's deferrable.
It's deferred,
It's
correct?
deferred, right.
Yes,
So we're deferring it. The library.
deferring it at this time.
Okay. So I have a motion. I have a second. I seconded. Discussion.
So just to clarify, by the term defer, does that mean that this committee and essentially the town won't be presented with any options for the library, at least for the next 6 years? Or does that mean that something substantial could happen and that it needs to be brought forth again for consideration? I'm just trying to understand the technical next steps in the event that.
Is 6 years, do you think, too long, or do we want to?
Well, the life of this plan is 6 years.
6 years. Okay.
Well,
go ahead, Jay.
The length of the plan is 6 years, but you very well could be revisiting the plan in 2 years, even though the life expectancy, even though the plan itself is for 6 years. So this is something where certainly additional information could come forward, could be developed, and you could reconsider it at a future date.
You could, but if it's not in the plan, it becomes a much harder sell to the townspeople because it wasn't in the original plan.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
If it were to come to a warrant article, that's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what I'm hoping is this is going to be a living plan, and we're going to go back and we're going to revisit it. Where are we? Do we have to move things based off of what's going on? Is a certain need come that all of a sudden it's going to get moved up in the plan? I hate to see this thing just get shelved and it's not a living.
Well, I think that's what we experienced with the last capital improvement
Correct.
plan.
And I don't, of all the work we're putting in, I don't want to see this one happen that way.
Agree. But what I don't want to do also is by tabling it, right, that it then pigeonholes the library into its current state for the next 6 years.
Correct.
Right. Because we know right now that that building has needs.
Right.
Oh, without a doubt, it has needs.
So things could change.
That's right.
So.
I think it would be prudent to come back in, at least in a couple of years, and revisit the CIP. So I think there's an opportunity there to develop additional information. Again, that's a choice, though. You could decide that you want to put a budget number in there.
Well, the only thing with that is we don't.
If something material happens to the library, we have these capital funds, right? Could the town use the funds to replace the roof, to replace the septic, to replace something material cost that is required?
We could.
So
we have building facilities, and
so the library does fall under that.
We are responsible for the building.
Okay.
But we don't, because they have, and I don't know what the balance of the funds are, but they have a trust fund for the maintenance of that building. So they've used a lot of the projects that they've done. They've used their own funds.
But ultimately, the town's responsible for the building.
Right.
I would assume that trust fund has a cap, right? Like everything. And I would assume that if something significant happens to that building, then what?
Okay, so from a planning standpoint, do we put it in the plan at the very end of the plan? And then from that plan, we said we were going to capture everything, but we were going to promote what we think is the right action items for the town at this time. Maybe that's not part of that, but it's still captured within the plan.
Maybe, yes, I like that. But maybe you also say, hey, maybe you budget 25 grand a year, right? in the plan, in the event something happens, that it's covered, or they have some funds available that we're dedicating within the plan to fix whatever is fixed as kind of a
Right.
a mitigating control. I don't know.
Here's the other thing. If we do use those funds 25 a year, we get to the point and we want to investigate engineering. Can we use the funds at that time for the engineering?
I guess, but again, this is just planning. It still needs to go to
Correct.
the board.
But I'm just trying to think from a planning standpoint. You know, you get to year 5 and said, oh, okay, we think we're going to do something. Now you've got $125,000 sitting there from a plan.
That makes sense. I mean, at least it's, you know.
We know, again, based upon the budget reviews and the walkthrough of the facilities last year, that things like flooring is a big concern.
Yep.
We know that roofing, and it's that old
Ceiling issues,
ceramic roof, right? That or whatever, the porcelain, whatever it's called.
Terracotta ones.
It's terracotta, yeah. We know that the HVAC system is extremely old, right? Those alone are big ticket items, as we all know. Maybe it falls under the $50,000 threshold.
Then essentially, what?
Go ahead.
Hello?
I was just gonna say, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm suggesting is a reserve fund for a library.
Capital reserve fund for library.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's essentially what we're talking about. Yeah.
That's the idea.
Yeah. I don't know, Mr. Flynn, what are your thoughts?
I still feel I don't have enough information. I mean, I don't want to table it and they have 6 years of we can't help them, or it can't get brought up again. But there isn't enough information for me.
Okay.
I'll find out. I'll reach out to Vicky and I'll find
It would
out
be interesting to know what's in
what the
there.
trust fund is that they have access to. Then in regards to, setting up a capital reserve specifically for the library, my preference is that you keep it, that we have one capital reserve fund for all town facilities so that we deal with those emergency situations as they occur. And we're not restricted to small pots of money here and there. Typically, when we address something like a failed Litchfield or a failed HVAC system, we come back the next year at town election and ask to refresh the fund. And I think that's a good approach. But now the question is, our goal is to try to maintain a $50,000 balance in the building facilities fund. Maybe that should be revisited, and our goal should be to try to increase that fund balance.
It'd still be interesting to know more about the building. What do they have? What can we do? What can't we do?
So, I mean, there's a motion and a second. So,
There is. And this is discussion. So,
Take my motion back.
take your motion.
Table it to next meeting. Get more information.
Well, I mean,
I just have a hard time because we don't know any site for it. We don't know what a true cost is going to be for it. So I don't know how we're just going to put a number in. It's just, we're picking a number out of the year of $3 million.
Yep.
We have no supporting documentation on, is that even a valid number?
what are the next steps for this committee? And the reason why I ask that is, if there's still an opportunity for us, and it sounds like we're going to have at least one more meeting, but if there's an opportunity for us at that meeting then to visit the library, hopefully we get a little bit more information and then make an educated decision.
Yeah.
Or if this is the final meeting for votes and next meeting is really just a summary, then, action should probably be taken tonight. So what are the next steps here?
Well, I think the next steps getting through the plan obviously is the steps that we're working on now. But I think the next step would be for Jay to put it all together, and then we review it. And then I think we're going to have at some point a public hearing to have the public come in and make comments or make suggestions.
And we talked about the planning board presenting.
And
Yep.
go into the
Planning
planning board
board.
for recommendations. And then once then come back to this committee. And then at that point,
So really, at this point, we're targeting the end of September, maybe mid-October.
Yeah.
You know, to still accommodate everyone's meeting schedules and.
right.
You know, and then we're starting to get into budget at that point
Yeah.
too,
Right.
so.
Right.
Okay.
So I think that's where we are.
So then, yeah, I would agree that just table it.
I think we should table it.
There's still time.
My motion is to table this until the next meeting.
Okay, motion, we seconded it. Discussion. All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstain, motion passes 3-0. It's tabled.
Conservation we took care of.
Recreation.
Recreation. So what did he say, like 175,000?
Well, he said his numbers added up to 161,300. We're saying, hey, maybe factor in a little bit of fluctuation for oil change pricing as well as striping.
Yep.
Which rough estimate will be in the somewhere of the $175,000 ballpark.
Which I'm very comfortable with. The biggest thing is what year do we put it in?
Right.
Well, what we heard earlier today from Jay is 2022 and 2024.
Right.
Who's sharing? Is that you, Troy? Is that you?
That's Andy Ruggles.
Oh, Andy's back?
So, yeah, that being said, my recommendation would probably be either one of those years.
Probably, I mean, it needs to be done.
Oh, it's needed to be done for a long time. I mean, I think it was last year they tried to regrade it somewhat out there, and it really didn't help it very much.
I think it would be wise to, in your budget in 2021, to do some engineering design.
Okay.
So that you're set up with a good design,
Mhm.
and you do it in 2022. It needs to be done.
Oh, it definitely does.
So how much do you budget for 2021?
Based off the work you've done budgeting, what do you think needs to be budgeted? Because you've done a lot of it for
So
the
that
town.
kind of, preliminary engineering, I would think in the $8,000 range. If you're gonna put it out, so that it's ready to go out to bid, it's got the whole bid packet, everything.
So do 8,000 in 2021,
Part one and then part two.
then it'd be probably the whole 175, I would have to say, into
But I mean, I
2022.
can get an estimate from an engineering company to.
So do you want to wait until Troy gets a?
Well, it's not, you're not gonna put the planning in your CIP because you're doing 50,000 or more.
Correct.
I'm
The 8
saying-
grand
I'm
one
saying
would
in
be-
our
I think we
2021
just,
budget.
yeah.
Sorry.
We would, internally budget.
I'll make a motion that we allocate $175,000 in 2022 for the repaving of the Dara parking lot.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, I have a second. Do I have discussion? All right, all those, the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes 3-0.
Cool.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So I think that covers everybody.
All right.
Okay.
Guess us through other.
Yeah, it did. So, I guess, Jay, I think, maybe you can start putting things together and, see
Yeah.
where it, goes from there. So, okay, great. At this time, I am going to open it up because we should open it up to public input at this time. Are there any members of the public that are out there who wish to comment? There are no members. Thank you, John. Okay, so I'll close public input. We did other, so I'm not going to worry about other. Next meeting date and time. When do we want to meet again?
I guess the question becomes when, Jay, when do
Yeah.
you think you can have the information kind of consolidated for the committee?
If we're meeting 2 weeks from today, I could get it done for then.
So August 17th.
You can get it done?
17th.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the
Is there a meeting date that works?
because
17th?
everyone
Yeah, keep us on schedule. August the 17th would.
17th.
Right.
Okay. All right. So August the 17th is our next meeting, 6 p.m. here in Town Hall. Is there anything else? Troy, do you have anything else?
No, we will.
Anybody have anything else?
We don't need any department heads or anything to.
Just
I mean,
the
I'll
library.
Make them aware. The library will want them.
Yeah, just the library because we're kind of, that one is,
You know, unless you can get the information from them and just present on their behalf, but
Okay.
they don't want to be here.
they're comfortable doing it.
Yeah. It's whatever, you know, their will is.
Okay. All right. I have nothing. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? I'll second. Discussion? All those signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Passes 3-0-0. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. See you on the 17th of August. Take care.